Hi there, Cindy Baker from Love Helps, here to share a great book with you today. And in our book, we're going to find out a secret. So watch for that secret today when we read the story, The Book Hog. Now, before we get started, I wanted to talk to you about Greg Pizzoli. He did something for this book. He wrote the story, but he also drew the pictures. Now, isn't that something that he can write and draw his pictures? He writes the story and draws the pictures. That's what he did for this book. So, do you remember what that's called when you write the story? What's that person called? The author. And the person who drew the pictures is called the illustrator. So Greg Pizzoli is both the author and the illustrator of Book Hog. So we're going to read that story today, and I think you're really going to enjoy it, and you're going to find out a secret today about Book Hog. The Book Hog. The Book Hog by Greg Pizzoli. The Book Hog loved books, and he had quite a few. Look at all the books he has. Goodness, that's a lot. He loved the way they smelled, the way the pages felt in his hooves. He especially liked the ones with pictures. Do you see where he is? He's reading in the bathroom. He picked them up here. He's at a yard sale. And there, someone must have thrown a book away. He's looking in the trash can. Anywhere he could find them. Now he's at a bookstore. Sometimes you can buy used books at a bookstore too. But the Book Hog had a secret. Shh, a big secret. What do you think his secret is? He didn't know how to read. He had never learned. He was surrounded by books, but the Book Hog couldn't read a single one. Well, that's kind of sad. He doesn't know how to read. The Book Hog went to bed every night without a bedtime story. One morning, he went out looking for more books. He came to a long, low building, and he smelled some books inside. Do you see the sign at the top of the building? It says library. We can only see half of it, but we can figure that out. He snuck through the stacks, adding several books to his pile. But then a soft voice said, "Would you like to join us for story time?" It was Miss Olive, the librarian. "Pick out a book, and I'll read it with you." The Book Hog blinked. Then he swallowed. "You'll read a book with me?" "Well, of course," said Miss Olive. "As many as you'd like." This gave the Book Hog an idea. "Wait here," he said. Wonder what his idea is. He went home. Does that give you a clue as to what his idea is? And he came back with some books. That's a lot of books, isn't it? Miss Olive led story time, and the Book Hog listened closely. He heard many stories, some funny, some sad, some kind of in between. Over time, and with practice, the Book Hog learned to read on his own. He grew to love books even more, not just for the way they looked and felt, but for the stories they told. And yes, the Book Hog still takes a lot of books. We see all those books beside him and on his bed, but he always brings them back. He's taking them back to the library after he finishes reading. Miss Olive is there. And do you see what that sign says underneath her? It says book fair this Wednesday. I bet you have a book fair sometimes at your school. It's a fun place to go to look for new books. All right, we just got finished with the Book Hog. I hope you enjoyed that book. I enjoyed reading that book. Let me ask you some questions, and I'm going to pause after my questions, and you can hit pause also, answer the question, then hit play, and see if your answers match my answers. So the first thing I want to ask you is, how did Book Hog feel about books? He loved them, didn't he? He loved books. And what do you remember some things that he said that he loved about books? How he said he loved how they smelled and how they felt, and he loved looking at pictures. Do you like looking at pictures in books? I do. I think that's fun. Where do you remember some places that Book Hog found his books? Do you remember some places? He said he found them at yard sales. He found some in the trash can, and he found them in bookstores, even used bookstores. You know, you can go to a bookstore and it might have books that people have already read, they're finished with, and they trade them in or sell them back to get a new book. And so he found books all kinds of places. But in our story, do you remember we found out that Book Hog had a secret? What was his secret? His secret was he couldn't read, right? He couldn't read. So that was kind of sad to find out. As much as he loved books, it was sad to find out that he couldn't read. But one day he was walking by a building and he smelled the books inside there. What was that building that he smelled? Do you remember? It was the library, wasn't it? Wow, he found the jackpot of all book places, didn't he? I bet you have a library at your school that I hope that you visit and check out books. There's libraries in your community that you can go and check out books. So the library, if you are someone who loves books, is a great place to be. What did he find out about the library that he was really surprised about? Book Hog discovered that he could check out new books and read them and then return them and get new books to read, some more new books to read. He was really excited about the library, wasn't he? What idea did Book Hog have for Miss Olive? Do you remember? She said she would read books, and so he came up with this great idea. What was it? He went home, didn't he? And he got lots of books, and he wanted her to read the books that he had collected, didn't he? So remember when he was coming back and he had all those books on the back of his, in that little cart on the back of his scooter, and he brought it back to the library for her to read. But then Miss Olive says she would do something else for him. Do you remember what else she said she would do that was super nice? She says she would help him learn to read, didn't she? And I bet that's what you're doing at school. You're learning how to read, and I bet your teacher wants you to learn, so she's teaching you all the steps that you need to know on how to learn to read. How do you think that Book Hog felt when he couldn't read? I was thinking sad, that he was probably sad that he couldn't read. As much as he loved books, that he was sad he couldn't read. What happened as Book Hog learned to read? What did he do? How was he feeling as he learned how to read? He loved books even more, didn't he? He went from just looking at them and smelling them and touching them to being able to read the stories inside. Now, I'm going to ask you some questions and see if you can answer these questions for me. The first one is a yes or no. Are you learning how to read? I hope the answer is yes, you are, because you are going to be so excited and enjoy reading. There's so many ways that you can use your reading skills. And so could you tell me, after you learn how to read, what are some things you can do with the skill of reading? What can you do when you learn to read? I hope that you said you can enjoy reading stories and books when you learn how to read. You can also learn from books. Some books can teach us how to do something or teach us about things, so we can learn when we're reading books. Sometimes books tell us directions on maybe how to get somewhere, or maybe a sign on the road. You read it and it tells you something about the road, or a cookbook where you get recipes to bake things or cook things. Or maybe you even got a toy and it came with directions on how to put it together, and so you would know how to read the directions on putting your toys together. So reading is such a great skill to have, and the way that you become a good reader is practice. You just keep practicing the sounds of those letters, practicing seeing a word and knowing what that word is just by looking at it. And if you don't, you can sound it out, and then you begin to put those words together to make sentences, and sentences make stories. And so reading is a great skill to have. So keep working, keep practicing, and I think you'll be happy that you did. Thanks for listening to Book Hog today. Bye.